And a very warm welcome back to Day 8 of the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, coming to you live from outside the Endler Hall on this bustling Friday evening. This is the live stream for the 8th evening concert of this festival, the first of the 3 student orchestral concerts that cap off the Sicmf. We had a masterclass with faculty trumpeter, or oboist I should say, Dwight Parry earlier this afternoon. And I've just come from a conversation with Peter Martens in which we discussed his role as festival director, inviting the audience into the behind-the-scenes reality of the high-level music making and organizational stewardship of this festival. Last night's 7th and final faculty concert was certainly a way to crown off this first week of the 20th Sicmf in style, with 4 concerti and 2 South African premieres. So let's give you a quick rundown of some of the highlights of that concert. First, Against the Dying of the Light, inspired by the famous poem composed by Dylan Thomas, a meditation on resistance, volatility, and the passage of time. Peter Martens was a soloist in this work, and this was the first South African performance conducted by David Cohen. Masterful playing by our soloist there, and so nice to read your comments on YouTube last night and to know that you enjoyed the faculty concert with us. Debbie, Bonnie, Karen, Mariana, Dirk, Manuel, Elizabeth, Jacob, Latifa, Elizabeth, Leonardo, Ilya, Jonathan, and Annaline. Now this evening we will be welcoming the Festival Symphony Orchestra to the stage under the direction of Antony Hermus for three large works on this program. The first, The Fountain of Youth by the American composer Julia WOLFE, explores themes of vitality and rejuvenation. And that will be followed by the Piano Concerto by Maurice Ravel, a piece that I've always wanted to hear live, and it's no doubt going to be played exquisitely by our faculty pianist Emanuil Ivanov. And incidentally, just after that, in the interval tonight, I'm going to be chatting to another faculty pianist, Peter Grobler, and after that, the mighty First Symphony by Johannes Brahms. Brahms was known for his obsessive perfectionism, and so it's not surprising that this symphony took 21 years for him to complete from start to finish. And when it came to publishing the work, he even tested it out on audiences several times, making many tweaks to the manuscript. As the Endler fills up with a very different audience from the previous nights, mostly tonight family and friends of the students and members of the public who are here to hear our Festival Symphony Orchestra, let's look back at another highlight from last night, the beginning of the third movement of the Oboe Concerto by Guillaume Connaissant, known as The Beautiful Hours. And let's start at that moment when soloist Dwight Parry was getting a little hot under the collar.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first of 3 orchestral concerts that will conclude our 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. Now, on your seat, you would have discovered a piece of paper with a circle. It's not an IQ test. You will find a pen as well. So I just want to give you a quick little bit of an explanation of what that is. In commemorating our 20th festival, we have commissioned an artwork by a fantastic artist by the name of Gavin Rain. This artwork is approximately 3 by 3 meters, and it will be erected outside the steps of the Beerens foyer, in front of the Concerto, therefore taking in a permanent place. So what we need from you is to write a message to the festival, whether it's a message of congratulations or your favorite memory. Please stay within the lines. And if you are done, please hand it into one of the ushers or with Teresa van der Merwe at the foyer table. Now, I just quickly want to explain what will happen to those circles. In your own handwriting, it will be etched onto a circle exactly the same size, made of steel. And what Gavin does is he puts his circles together. First of all, there's 1,098 circles. We are currently approximately 750, so we need about another 350 over the next 3 days. So please, we need you to fill in those circles. So what will happen with the circle is that every circle will be mounted. And those circles can turn left, or they can turn right, or down, or up. And Gavin, not being able to use color, will be working with shadow. So he's worked out mathematically the exact angle that that circle must be tilted in order to make a shadow. And the shadow and non-shadow will create the face of our patron, Bishop Desmond Tutu. So I think you can understand the significance of these circles for us. The festival has always been about magic, and it's magic that's created by participants and teachers and performers, and also by you, the audience. So we need you to become part of that magic permanently and hand in your circles. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina, for that very kind reminder of the special artwork that the Sicmf is creating as part of its 20th anniversary celebrations. We're welcoming the conductor onto stage, Antony Hermus, for this festival symphony orchestra. I'll tell you more about this piece afterwards, but for now, just to say it's by Julia WOLFE and is called The Fountain of Youth, and that it's all about creating a sense of youthful energy in music, spirit and defiance, all things that tie in so well with the philosophy of this festival. feeling rejuvenated? I sure am. That work, Fountain of Youth, by Julia WOLFE, a contemporary American composer, conducted by Antony Hermus, and you heard that coming to you live from the Endler Hall stage, the festival Symphony Orchestra, Enzo Koch, concertmaster, here at the 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. And this, the first of our 3 orchestral evenings, having just come from 7 glorious faculty evening concerts. You thought they packed a lot of players onto those stages. Well, how many more student participants can you fit onto a stage? Impressive Tetrising this evening. But what an exciting sound from that work. A composer who's known for her energetic, socially engaged music that often blends classical rock and minimalist influences. So that work we just heard was commissioned by the New World Symphony in collaboration with Carnegie Hall and was premiered in 2019 under the baton of the famous conductor and composer Michael Tilson Thomas. And as I mentioned a bit earlier, it is a piece that explores the themes of vitality and rejuvenation. WOLFE, the composer, conceived the work as a celebration of youthful energy, not necessarily tied to age, but to spirit and defiance. Though abstract in form, the piece reflects her signature rhythmic drive and bold orchestration. That much was apparent. And the composer notes that while in legend many have sought to drink from or bathe in the fountain of youth, for her, it's music that is the source of youthfulness. And no doubt, the orchestral participants this evening would agree with that evaluation. Now, the next work, as you know, is the Piano Concerto by Ravel, which requires much lighter forces, hence the rearrangement of the stage and the piano that will shortly be moved onto the stage. And here it comes. I don't want to say anything lest I disturb the piano movers. Don't want the instrument to fall off the stage. Okay, let's lock the wheels. Don't want it sliding into the cellos as our soloist Emanuil Ivanov is playing his cadenza. Now, if you really enjoyed that first work, there is a chance to hear it again on Sunday afternoon when this orchestra again plays that overture-like work. They will also be playing the Brahms First Symphony again, which we will hear in the second half this evening. But instead of the Piano Concerto by Ravel we're going to hear a bassoon concerto on Sunday instead, featuring another faculty artist, Bram van Sandbeek. Let's not knock over too many more chairs tonight. So while the orchestra are rearranging themselves, perhaps I can tell you a little bit more about the work we're about to hear, which, as I mentioned earlier, will be my first hearing of a live performance of this work, hence the keyboard tie I decided to wear this evening. So this is the second time we're hearing Maurice Ravel as part of this festival. The very first time, you may remember, was on the first night, last Friday evening, at the first faculty concert, Bolero, which wowed everyone and probably Ravel's best-known orchestral showpiece. But now we're going to hear his piano concerto. It's in G major, and it was composed between 1929 and 1931. And it bucks trends in a similar way to the way the Bolero did at the first concert, but this time because Ravel didn't seek to create too much of a serious work. Instead, he intended or hoped to entertain audiences rather than make a profound artistic statement. He'd visited the United States just a few years before composing this work, And so this concerto features the influence of what Ravel understood as jazz, in addition to elements of Basque popular music from Spain. And the dedicatee and soloist at the debut performance in 1932 was Marguerite Long, with the composer himself conducting the premiere, and a conscious decision was made to use reduced orchestral forces to create a lighter and more sparkling atmosphere. And so the Festival Symphony Orchestra, under the guidance of their concertmaster Enzo, is tuning up. This work unfolds in 3 movements: Allegramente, the slow central movement Adagio, assai, and the finale is marked Presto. Antony Hermus, who is the faculty conductor, along with Michael Repper at this year's Sicmf, will again conduct this work, and Emanuil Ivanov, who has been a great favorite amongst both audiences and students at this festival, will be the soloist. And here he comes, Emanuil Ivanov. We've had the pleasure of seeing him play with Cape Town Philharmonic Orchestra, played some Rachmaninoff. Now he's going to play Ravel, and Antony Hermus leading the Festival Symphony Orchestra, coming to you live on this Friday evening in the Endler Hall in Stellenbosch as part of the 20th Sicmf. Enjoy. Rapturous applause for our soloist and orchestra, conductor, all participants, Emanuil Ivanov, soloist in Ravel's piano concerto, embracing the conductor, Antony Hermus, who's now singling out particular members of the orchestra. Is that a cor anglais? My eyes are not so good. Looks like it. Horn. Piccolo. Flute. Oboe. Being taken through my paces here. Clarinets, bassoon, other bassoon, trumpets, trombone, percussion. Yes, they were very busy, not just in this piece, but the one before it, and all the strings on their feet. Remember, Ravel deliberately orchestrated this for a lighter ensemble to give it a sparkling atmosphere. I especially love that sublime second movement. I sneaked into the hall for that movement and just enjoyed the impressionistic sounds of Ravel washing over me. As I hope you did too from wherever you're listening in. Don't forget to let us know in the chat where you tuned in from, what you enjoyed most about the first half here in this orchestral concert. Emanuil Ivanov, we are so lucky to have him visiting us here in Cape Town, Stellenbosch. And the conductor also seems to be a great hit with the student participants. What fantastic opportunity for them to be able to play these big masterpieces of the repertoire, especially that Brahms we're going to hear a little bit later, in addition to all the other coaching they've had this week. Looks like, dare we even hope for a short encore, maybe just a smidgen, Emanuil Ivanov.
vaudeville performer, clown from the early 20th century, whom Debussy saw perform in Paris, and he tried to picture him in this little piece.
Well, two impressionists for the price of one there. Book 2, number 6 by Claude Debussy from his Preludes, General Levine Mi Eccentric. I'm sure you picked that up from all that exciting syncopation and cheeky finger play there, courtesy of Emanuil Ivanov, our soloist this evening. The audience here in the Endler Hall keen to extract every note they can from him. Emanuil, very part of our musical family here at the Sicmf, and indeed that is something that makes this festival very special, the family feeling, the feeling of being amongst equals, whether that's amongst faculty, students, or festival staff. And so a highlight of the final faculty concert, the one we heard last night, each year is a short award ceremony to reward or to call out humorous moments or behavior during a festival. But last night, a very special tribute was paid on the occasion of this 20th Sicmf to artistic director Nina Schumann and festival director Peter Martens. And so we're going to re-watch that now quickly while I get ready with my guest, Peter Grobler. And after that, we'll quickly head straight into the final minutes of Paganini's variations on the theme from Rossini's Moses in a special arrangement and performance by David Cohen.
I would like to take a moment to sincerely thank Peter and Nina for their tremendous contributions to this festival over the past 20 years. The festival has grown from just a few Stellenbosch students to a monumental extravaganza, featuring some of the top chamber music performances in the country and an elite lineup of international and local faculty. We house, coach, and support over 300 participants annually, and the two festival orchestras achieve great success in some of the most challenging orchestral repertoire, all in just 10 days. The Sicmf has become a highlight on the musical calendar of students, professional musicians, pedagogues, and our loyal audience who fill these seats every night. Peter, as festival director, your tenacity in upholding the operations of this festival is inspiring. And on behalf of the team currently, as well as all those who have come before, we would like to thank you for your leadership and determination. Nina, as founder of the Sicmf, your artistic leadership has truly kept this festival alive for 20 years, and your programming brings together so many people from various walks of life and truly creates moments of magic on this very stage. On behalf of the entire Sicmf community, we would like to celebrate both of you tonight and present you with gifts to commemorate this special occasion. In this frame is a copy of this year's poster and the program showing the celebratory 20-year projects that will stand for many years to come, in particular the artwork by Gavin Rain, which will remain outside the Endless Steps. There's also a group photo from this 20-year anniversary year. We hope that you can hang these frames in your office as a memory of not only Sicmf 2025, but of the 20 years that came before. We would also like to present to you customized jewelry items that you can wear on stage as a tribute to your hard work and dedication over the past 20 years. We hope that you carry these items with you for the next 20 years as a reminder of how much the Sicmf community truly appreciates you. Would you please all join me in a standing ovation for Nina and Peter, directors of the Sicmf.
Welcome back to the interval, to the foyer here in the Stellenbosch Conserve, where we're still catching our breath after that glorious Ravel piano concerto. And you can see we're very much in a piano theme this evening, which is appropriate because my guest this evening is an associate professor in piano here at Stellenbosch University, someone who's been intimately involved with the festival for many, many years. Peter Grobler, welcome, and thanks for joining me this evening as faculty pianist as well in this festival. So how long has your association with this festival spanned?
I was appointed here in 2010. I remember directly after being appointed, Nina wrote to me. I was still living in the US with like 2 weeks or so notice. Oh, don't I want to come now? And I had to wait for my move to come. So I couldn't come to the 2010 festival already. So I joined from 2011. So I've been involved ever since.
And we were just chatting a little bit earlier about some of the things that the management of the festival has learned since then. For example, not having student coaching classes at 8 a.m.
Yeah, and at that point in time, of course, I was also 15 years younger, so I partied with until what time in the morning. But yeah, so it was quite difficult making those early. But one can just feel in the festival how it has matured actually over the past few years. One thing that stayed the same is this wonderful vibe and the energy. Some of the other faculty members who have now since left commented also on the faculty group how incredible this atmosphere at the festival is.
Almost everyone has said exactly. There's this incredible appetite, eagerness to learn, eagerness to share as well, but works both ways, from the student participants and from the faculty who just want to have a ball in every respect, make beautiful music, share what they can.
I actually looked through my comments in the 10-year anniversary book, and I noticed I commented on that very same thing there already as well. So I'm glad that this golden thread has continued through all the years.
Indeed, and as you say, if anything, it's just been further refined and polished. It really is kind of a magic recipe that we have here at the festival. And this balance between the students especially being able to have coaching sessions, master classes, then these concerts where they can just lap up the musicianship in front of them, and then to play in the orchestra as well.
And what I've noticed this year as well is the expansion of performance opportunities also for students. Performing in the faculty concerts as well.
That's right, exactly.
Some of the students had something like 6 concerts to even perform in.
That's right.
And what an amazing opportunity for the students.
And I mean, you've been very busy yourself with the faculty concerts.
Absolutely.
What have some of the highlights of this year's festival been for you?
Well, of course, it's been wonderful playing together with colleagues, but I must say, the first evening, the faculty concerts with the Vivaldi, Richter, I thought that was quite touching. I really
It's a very special piece, the way it also straddles the old and the new in a way as well, which is kind of what this festival does. You have Brahms one moment, and then you have some brand new composition the next.
Yeah, and I've not been at the past 2 festivals. I had other appointments at that time, so when I heard this performance taking shape, I thought, oh, it's nice to be back. It was quite emotional even. So wonderful. I absolutely looked forward and enjoyed the Brahms quintet as well the other evening. We have such a huge variety of repertoire.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so eclectic, and there really is something for everyone. And
well, what is astonishing about the festival, I was telling some of my friends that just the sheer amount of music. The content of music here is like a major concert series that's simply presented in 10 days. It's insane. And it's so rich and then if you add the afternoon concerts still by the students as well, it's just an enormous, rich fountain of music.
And there are guests here who buy these festival passes. They come to all the concerts, and as you say, they come to all the student ensemble concerts. They sit on the master classes, on the conversations. It is an absolute feast.
It's an absolute feast.
Yeah, so we're very, very lucky here. And yes, so you've also had students who've come to this festival.
Yeah.
And what have they commented on that they've sort of been able to take away from their time here?
I think what they take away, some of them aren't necessarily already experienced in chamber music, so that for them is special. We forget that it can be quite daunting for a student to, for the first time, maybe get into ensembles and meeting new people and so on. So it's a wonderful developmental thing, and they come back for that.
Exactly,
They
year
really
after
love
year.
that. And also meeting fellow colleagues or future colleagues from across the country, this camaraderie between the students. I think that's some of the most important things that they, Of course, also this deadline, the concert is looming. They have 3 coachings on the piece, which is brand new, because one of the most important aspects in South African music education is that our students tend to spend too much time on single pieces.
Right.
They tend to almost spend a year, say, on 3 pieces, if you look in the high school type of training.
Yes.
So this type of experience introduces them to a more of a realistic expectation of what will happen in real life.
Yes, and I suppose it's a balance, isn't it? One wants to spend time really sort of mastering a piece.
Of course.
But
yeah.
of course you also need to get the repertoire under
Yeah.
your fingers and be exposed to a diversity of styles.
Yeah, and be able to put something, having a short deadline and getting it on.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because music education pedagogy, particularly in piano, is very important to you, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
focus of yours.
Yeah, it's one of my focuses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you
So-
elaborate a little bit more?
Well, one of the courses that connects with this is my second year repertoire studies course, where I focus specifically on teaching literature, because many of the students don't actually know some of the studies and the wide variety of literature that's available to give to a student. So we tend to focus on the UNISA or the Royal School's
Syllabus
albums.
is right, yes.
And my aim is for them to know where all of this comes from.
Right.
So that they as teachers can collect their own music and enrich students' lives through that.
Yes.
And that includes topics like avant-garde music for youngsters even, or ensemble music or concertos, etc.
That's so
To introduce
interesting.
that at an early age already.
Yes, and also as we kind of build the ecosystem and then think already about the next generation and
Absolutely.
students who may become teachers themselves and
Yeah.
how best placed to advise their students.
And also reminding them of their own responsibility, because we need a new generation of South African pedagogical music as well.
Right.
And they're the generation that must now produce this.
Yes.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
do you think it's almost a bit overwhelming to be a musician today with just the sheer amount that's out there of music, of recordings? It's a lot. And how does
yeah.
one sort of stay almost focused?
I guess it's a 20th century occurrence that we are the first group that has focused on all music at the same time. So in the end, you'll just have to find your niche and do that. But you know, the fact is that we do introduce students to a wide range of music here as well. And that's a good thing.
Do you have a particular preference as a performer, a particular style or composer you enjoy playing
I'm a
the
bit
most?
of a dinosaur, so I like my Schumann and Mozart and Bach and
Yeah, dinosaur. I mean, that's the cornerstone. Is there anything on your bucket list that you have not yet performed that you would love to perform, maybe as part of this festival even?
Of this festival? No, I've not specifically thought of something to produce at the festival now.
Right.
But some of my bucket list items I'm actually doing at the new next WOLFE, playing some Mozart concertos with string quartets. So that's
very
going to be
nice.
fun.
Gosh, excellent. So let's look out for that. That's at the WOLFE,
Yeah.
Excellent. Peter, well, thank you so much for making
Thank
time,
you.
for talking us tonight and just giving us a sense of what it's like being kind of both faculty pianists, but also here in the faculty at Stellenbosch University.
Absolutely.
And this responsibility we have as musicians, not only as performers, but also as teachers, as educators, and so on. So we spoke earlier about the very eclectic music on offer here at the Sicmf. We're now going to look at a highlight from last night, which was this AC/DC Thunderstruck, and in particular the encore that Zandi van Dijk led with so much enthusiasm. And we're back for the second half of this 8th concert that forms part of the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, the first of 3 orchestral concerts. We've had 7 glorious evenings of faculty concerts, mainly centered around orchestra. Oh, I'm getting everything mixed up. I didn't have a glass of wine during the break. Faculty concerts focused on chamber music, and now 3 concerts focused on orchestral music. And this is the festival's symphony orchestra that are presenting their music this evening, and then again on Sunday in the late afternoon. We heard in the first half music by Julia WOLFE and Maurice Ravel under the conductorship, the baton of Antony Hermus. And in the second half, we come to one of the masterpieces, one of the cornerstones of the symphonic repertoire, the First Symphony by Johannes Brahms. Brahms, of course, like Dvorak, like Mozart, like Schubert, Schumann, really staples of this Sicmf. And Brahms, his symphonic music so important because he wrote 4 symphonies, and he was regarded as the symphonic successor to Beethoven. So it was really Beethoven that kind of formalized the symphonic form as we know it today, building on the framework of Haydn, who had come before him, but Beethoven imbuing it with all the romantic tendencies that we associate with the scherzo today, with the symphony today, the scherzo movement, for example. And so really when Beethoven completed his 9th symphony, the choral symphony that we all know with the Ode to Joy tune, it was really Brahms who then took over this sort of mantle and needed to decide, well, what could now be done with the symphonic form and with all the romantic ideas swirling around at that time in the mid to late 19th century, produced his symphonies. And as I mentioned a bit earlier, he was an obsessive perfectionist and spent so much time refining, especially this first symphony, before publishing it and letting it out into the world. And you will hear how it starts with this wonderful introduction with this very bold sort of timpani motif, a pounding almost to say, I'm Brahms, I'm here with my first symphony, I am the inheritor of Beethoven's mantle. Incidentally, the Symphony No. 1 by Brahms is in the same key as Beethoven's most famous, or second most famous, I guess, Symphony No. 5. It's No. 9, the choral symphony, and then No. 5 that we all know so well. Da-da-da-dum. Also in C minor, that goes through this tremendous transformation throughout its symphonic course to C major. So Brahms almost certainly having Beethoven in mind when he chose the key of this first symphony of his. Barry Ross, who writes these wonderful program notes here in the festival booklet, says how eagerly this work was anticipated and how it was heavily scrutinized given Brahms's reputation as a master of chamber music, as we heard here at the festival the other night, and his reluctance to write symphonies too early in his career. And it was premiered in Vienna under conductor Hans Richter. It was a great success, and it was almost instantly championed by the critic Eduard Hanslick, who used it as a musically conservative stick with which to beat his Wagner-loving critical rivals. Comparisons to Beethoven abound. This symphony blends rigorous classical structure and extensive motivic development with romantic expressiveness. Aha, that's what I said earlier. It also features the famous C minor to C major heroic trajectory from Beethoven's 5th, and the finale contains a principal theme that shares some similarity to Beethoven's Ode to Joy, with some even going so far as to calling it Beethoven's 10th symphony. Yes, I think that is taking things a little bit too far. Enzo Koch, our concertmaster here of the Festival Symphony Orchestra this evening, leading the tuning of the orchestra. The hall lights dimming here in the Endler Hall, and we await the arrival of the conductor, Antony Hermus. Something very special about that anticipation, the anticipatory moment before performance, something that takes us back to the early concerts of this festival. Antony Hermus on the podium, and here he is about to conduct the Symphony No. 1 in C minor, Opus 68, by Johannes Brahms. glorious C major coda, completing our voyage, our musical journey from the darkness of C minor with which that symphony started to C major. There you heard the mighty First Symphony by Johannes Brahms, played by the Festival Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Antony Hermus, coming to you live from the Endler Hall in Stellenbosch, the first of 3 orchestral concerts presented by the 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. And what an experience for these young musicians to be playing such a cornerstone of the repertoire under such authoritative guidance and leadership. Now's your chance to shout out in the chat if you know someone in the orchestra, if you're watching from afar, cheering them on. Our winds getting special mention. Enzo Koch, leader of the orchestra. All the strings. And all those who participated earlier in the evening as well, the rest of the brass, the horns, the harp, taking a well-deserved applause and bow. Very nicely conducted. Perhaps you notice some similarities in that final movement, one of those motifs often being compared to the Ode to Joy theme. Ooh, looks like we might be getting a little bonus. Shostakovich, always perfect for music to get our pulse up, and the audiences as well. The Galop. What a fantastic opportunity for these young musicians to be able to play the music by another great composer here. Even if a lot of it was tongue-in-cheek, some extra special choreography thrown in for good measure. But a very nice call to end this concert off with all the musicians on the stage, the entire Festival Symphony Orchestra, whom you can see again at the 10th and final concert of this festival on Sunday afternoon. So if you're enticed Excited by what you heard this evening? Come and hear it in person on Sunday. Tremendous appreciation by the young musicians for their conductor, and indeed by the audience here in the Endler. Standing ovation, no less. Big bow once again. The conductor's job is never complete. What a fantastic evening of youthful music making here at this 8th concert at the Endler Hall. Time to say goodbye, as they say or as they sing. I'll see you outside shortly. Well, that's it for our first orchestral concert here at the 2025 Sicmf. Antony Hermus led our festival symphony orchestra in a memorable evening of music by contemporary American composer Julia WOLFE, followed by Ravel, and finally Brahms. And incidentally, you'll be able to hear that symphony again on Sunday in the late afternoon as the final work in this year's Chamber Music Festival. Now the festival concert orchestra will be on stage in the Endler Hall tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. for music by Beethoven, Saint-Saëns and Bizet, all conducted by Michael Repper. And of course we have our student ensemble concerts tomorrow at 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock, a bassoon masterclass with Bram van Sambeek at 3 p.m. and then our very final conversation between Bram and Antony Hermus at 7 p.m. So just 2 days of chamber music magic left at this year's 20th edition of the Sicmf. Don't miss out. So until tomorrow night, this is John Woodland and the team signing off. Take care and good night.